Many of you may recall a few years ago, we came up with the idea of really understanding your readiness for the new era. Basically, your readiness to start to take on risk and take on a role of population health management. So in that effort, we identified a number of core competencies that we felt were very important going forward and developed a framework for evaluating those core competencies. We're suggesting that much the same thing needs to be done today relative to different dimensions of retail and specific retail principles that we think are going to be really important going forward. And I'm going to go through each of these because, again, I think they are important considerations. The first piece is price. Are we competitively priced in the marketplace? And this is a really nuanced kind of consideration here. And not something that you can just knee-jerk necessarily to a price match strategy and expect to succeed going forward. As Dan mentioned, one of the things that we're starting to talk about that we've never talked about before was demand elasticities for different services. And we think they are very different depending upon the type of care that an individual is looking at. In some cases, we're really dealing with commodity services where the consumer basically believes everybody delivers the same product in terms of the quality of that product. In those cases, obviously pricing strategy needs to be much more aggressive than in situations where consumers do perceive a difference in the quality of care that's being provided and or the expertise that a particular provider is bringing to the table. So this pricing strategy, again, we believe needs to be developed within a context of competitive intelligence about your individual markets. Demand elasticities are likely to be different in Boston than they are in Houston or in Southern California for different services. So really getting down to a local market understanding of your circumstance is required. A second basic principle really relates to access and convenience. And I'm going to dive into this in pretty great detail in a few moments. But fundamentally, we believe that the basis of competition around access and the way in which access in healthcare is likely to change moving forward is dramatic. And the discussion you heard this morning, I think, is indicative of that type of change and the potential that really is out there for a major shift in the delivery system and how folks access care. Looking at multi-channel offerings, are you only relating to the market in one way? If you are, you may be only appealing to one segment of the consumer base in your area. As we're looking at, again, more complex strategies here, we think that multi-channel offerings are likely to be necessary. So basically, you're meeting the consumer and different segments of the consumer spectrum in the way in which they're comfortable in relating to you. Whether that be on-site visits, virtual visits, or other mechanisms for interaction with individuals. The idea here is one size is not likely to fit all going forward, especially given generational issues in the way folks consume information today, and so that we really need to develop a multidimensional strategy in terms of how we put forward channels. Certainly the customer experience is an important element of this. Beyond just access, it's how we relate to those individuals. I was struck by Dr. Gwande's comments this morning about the great untapped potential for relationship management as the mechanism by which we maintain stickiness to consumers in our markets going forward. And that whole experience is all a part of that equation. Our brand, we need to understand our brand and the strengths and relative weaknesses of our brand vis-a-vis the competition. And then understanding the customer base, which I think is probably a greatly undervalued capability right now at this point in time. So if you look at what a retailer like Walgreens or Walmart does in terms of collecting data on their customers and consumers within the market, it's very, very different than I think I've seen in any healthcare institution across the country. They're really diving deep in understanding consumer behavior, segmenting the market in different ways to understand, again, how to relate to different elements of the consumer market, and very importantly, understanding what drives consumer decision and behavior as they're evaluating which health plan to select from or which provider to utilize for healthcare services. We believe a great deal of work is going to need to be done to really get our arms around consumer decision-making going forward and how that changes and how it's different for different segments of the market. And then finally, the issue around product and service relevance. Are the products that we're offering well understood by consumers? What's our value proposition? How does that value proposition compare to other alternatives that individuals are selecting from?